The Feel Good Hour podcast
with Sam Griffin
and Nigel Jones.
Real life problems, straight answers, tools that work.
We don't just talk about it.
We help you change it.
The Feel Good Hour.
Listen now on Spotify, Apple Podcasts and YouTube.
It's like a coaching session.
You can listen in on
Visit
feelgoodhour.com.
The Feel Good Hour.
Think better.
Feel better.
Live life better.
Hello and a very, very warm welcome to the Feel Good Hour, the podcast that tackles real life problems with straight answers and tools that work. I'm Nigel Jones. I'm a life coach, hypnotherapist and author of Walking Back to Happiness, and today's show is all about anxiety. Now I'm by myself today because Sam's away, but I'm still here going to be answering the questions that you've sent in over the last week or so around the subject of anxiety, and we've got 10 or so questions which I'm going to be answering and taking a deep dive into explaining what it is and how it affects us, but more importantly what we can do to get around it. So without any further ado, let's jump in to the first question. So what is anxiety and why do so many of us misunderstand it? So if we look at some of the key facts at the moment, the NHS says that something like 20% of the population of working age adults has some form of common medical or mental health condition. And the large percentage of that is down to what we call general anxiety disorder. And globally, anxiety is said to, the WHO says that something like 360 million people live with some form of anxiety disorder. That was in 2021. And I think the figures in 2025 say that 4.4% of the global population currently experience some form of anxiety disorder. So, you know, those are big, big numbers. Now, in terms of the definition, the best way, I think, to look at anxiety is to actually initially look at it as a friend, because it's only a response, a bodily response to a threat or a perceived threat that you believe that you have. So that classically is in ancient times, or when we were evolving, humans lived in tribes out on the savannas or in the caves. And if they were under threat, they would either fight, freeze, or flee. So it was basically stand your ground, run away, or just freeze. And anxiety is when that fear or that response is not resolved. So if you run away, you resolve it. If you fight, you resolve it. If you freeze, and you do nothing, maybe the tiger or whatever it is will kill you, but literally there is some form of resolution in one of those three responses to anxiety. But the problem in today's world is that we don't resolve the anxiety. So that negative email we receive, or the person who cuts across us in a car, or some negative words that are said to us, don't get resolved. They stay in our bodies, and therefore we just keep punishing ourselves with these anxious feelings, and that leads to long-term anxiety. So if you look at it as a friend and you say to yourself, well, I'm actually feeling this way because my body's telling me there's something wrong. So it's like protecting you. And that's really, really important. So I think the first definition is to look at it as a friend. In terms of a medical definition, it is the body's naturally recurring response to either some form of physical or psychological or behavioral state. So it all comes about from some form of perceived threat. So the important thing to do is to actually recognize that you have this response, because that's the best way to deal with it. So one thing I say quite a lot is anxiety, this is my definition, is a fear of something that's not yet happened. So we get anxious about doing a talk in public, or we get anxious about an exam that we're going to take, or a meeting that we're going to. So these are fears about something in the future that has not yet happened. So it's best to deal with these fears by first of all addressing them and naming them. And so when you have this fear or this response to an event that's not yet happened, the body releases things like cortisol and adrenaline, and that just leads you to having to those sort of hollow feelings inside, and feeling like, oh, I don't feel good about this, and it just repeats and repeats and repeats and just goes on to circle. So the key thing about anxiety is to first of all say, well, actually, it's my friend. It's there sending me a signal, telling me there's something wrong. So that allows me to go to the next stage, which is to do something about it. I love this phrase or saying from the great American writer Mark Twain, who said, "I have suffered a great many catastrophes in my life, many of which never happened." So the next question is, why does modern life feel so overwhelming? So the answer to this, put very simply, is that from an anxiety perspective, anxiety is not new, but the volume of modern triggers has changed. We're dealing with like always on news, social media, AI uncertainty, pressure from the economy, family demands, work pressure, health worries, constant digital interruption. It's just massive. I think there was some data from Ofcom in 2025 last year that said that 51% of UK adults now use social media to get their news. And, that in a way is like doom scrolling, because the stuff that's out there is just always, if not all the time, negative. And that just leads us to, into an anxiety sort of mindset. So if we look at this from an NLP or a neuro linguistic programming perspective, the way we consume information, or the way information gets into our minds, is we have to look at it from the amount of information that's actually out there, and it's something like over 12 million bits of information come in to our brain every second. But there is no way we can deal with all those. So what we actually end up doing is doing three things. We generalize, we delete, and we distort, because the brain can apparently only deal with about 100 or so pieces of information each second. So what it's actually doing, it's actually deleting a lot of information and just giving you the information that it thinks is relevant to you. So if you're a person who believes or looks at life negatively, or is believing the news, or literally reading the news every day, then you're going to be sort of in a sort of anxiety type mindset. And the brain is going to filter according to that mindset. So if you're looking at the world from a negative bias, then you're going to delete information that only gives you the information that is quite negative. So the stuff that's coming in is going to be negative if your mindset is negative. So that's the deletion side. It's also distorting as well. It's distorting the stories so they fit with the way you think, and it also generalizes them as well. So that all that information just gets filtered down to, if you believe the world is not a great place, then your brain will prove that you're right, because that's the way our mind works. It almost works along the line of what we call like a thinker prover. So whatever you think, the brain proves you right. So a good example of this is that, if you think, I'm going to have a great day today, then your brain will start looking for all the things around you that show that, yeah, this day is great. If you're going to think I'm going to have a bad day today, then exactly the opposite is true. The brain will start filtering out all the things that are great and just focus on the bad stuff. So that person who wakes up in the morning and says, oh God, it's another day, or I've got this, all this work to do, my heart is racing quick, how am I going to do it? everything that's going to happen to them that day is just going to be focused or biased towards negativity because they're just not in a good place. Opposite of that is if you wake up in the morning and you take a deep breath and you open the curtains and you go, wow, it's going to be a great day today, then you will start seeing lots of great things around you. So what's happening here is simply your brain is like a thinker prover. A good way to do this, or a good tool that you can use on yourself to counteract this or to actually do something about it, if you find yourself in an area whereby you're a bit down, a bit anxious, a bit sort of like looking in the world from a negative perspective, is to imagine that there's a librarian standing in the middle of your head, and that librarian is the voice that you hear every day. It's your central voice that tells you what to think about, what to look at, what to notice. And if you're going to have a bad day, you're going to send the librarian to the area of your brain where all the horrible books are kept. And what that librarian is going to do is pull down all the books, because all it's going to notice is those negative books. However, if you tell that librarian that it's going to be a great day, it's going to go to the area of your mind where all the great books are kept, and it's going to take down from the shelves all the good books. And so whatever you ask the librarian to do, it will do, because your brain is a thinker prover. So you could wake up in the morning and say to yourself, well, look, today's going to be a great day. I'm going to really smash that meeting in a couple of hours' time, or I'm going to really do well in that exam, which I'm taking in 2 weeks' time. Your brain is going to start to actually look for the answers to prove you right. So the summary of this is, just remember that your brain proves what you think. So if you think positively, your brain will try to prove you right. If you think negatively, your brain will try to prove you right. And the way around this is to imagine that there's a little librarian in the middle of your head, and whatever you tell that librarian to do, it will do. So if you say, tell me ways that I'm going to pass this exam, or what can I do to pass this exam in a couple of weeks' time, or tell me how I'm going to make this presentation go really well in a few weeks' time, or tell me how I'm going to get to the problem of solving my current work scenario and get a new job. Whatever it is, give your inner librarian the question that it can go and find the answer to, which is positive. And what will happen is you'll start to see your life change. So take that inner librarian to the positive part of the library. So the next question is, how do we deal with modern anxiety, such as AI, doomscrolling, and a world that just won't switch off? So, answer to this. I think the best tool you can use is the one that focuses on what you can control. And this is really important, because you really only can influence the things that are in your control. So I always say, whatever the problem is, ask yourself this question: can I influence it, or can I control it? Because if you can't, what's the point in worrying about it, because you've got no influence over it whatsoever? So it's almost like, come up with like, I like to sort of think of like 3 boxes. So you've got, write down all the things that you're anxious about or worried about, and actually put them into these different boxes. The first one is, I can't control this at all. The next one is, I think I might be able to control it. And the final one is, I've got complete control over this. And then just focus really on the ones in the box which you have complete control over, because it's those that you can influence. So what can I control? What can I influence? And the other side of it is what do I need to stop feeding? I mean, if you're thinking and worrying about something that you have no control over, then you really have to stop that, because you will never ever win, because you can't control it. So that's the first thing I would do. I would actually look at the I call this like a circle of control. So what can you control? So if we look at specifically at say, AI and the anxiety that goes around AI, it's really important to, name your fear. So if your fear is AI is going to take my job, or I'm just not going to be able to learn AI because I'm not tech savvy, those are all limiting beliefs. So just identify what the problem is first of all, and write it down. But the key thing to do really is to learn the basics. Just go on to Google, or go on to a free version of one of these uh, um, LLMs, as they're called, like Grok or ChatGPT, or Google or Perplexity. Or Claude is another one as well, and literally just say, well, look, I need to find out the basics of how these work, because there's lots of courses out there, and just ask the actual AI LLM itself, what are the basics, what do you do, how can I use you, and so that gives you immediately uh, experience in what AI is, because as soon as you start to name your fear and to actually face it, then you start to overcome it. And so really learning the basics, upskilling, um, using AI as a tool rather than treating it as a threat. Maybe use it to write a couple of emails or a job application, or to plan your next holiday. So this is the best way to deal with AI, is to face it full on and start using it. And talk to other people as well. Talk to others about what they're doing with AI. Do they use it? And I'm sure there's lots of people out there who are in the same boat, and it's just a matter of just talking to others, experience it, and having a go. And the main thing is, stop letting the headlines that we see in the news every day, every second about AI get to you. So that's what we'll do for AI. There's some tools there. In terms of doom scrolling, um, what can you do? Stop immediately. If you can't stop immediately, then just set a time during the day when you look at the social media news and you scroll the news, and maybe it's like 20 minutes in the morning, or 20 minutes in the afternoon. So you literally just do it for a tiny amount of time each day to start off with, and then you can sort of break the habit of just continuous scrolling. Remove alerts. So that's another classic one. Don't have like these flashy alerts every time a news story breaks that you're updated on. And I think just ask yourself the question, is this good for my health? I mean, because the answer and the reality is, doom scrolling and just mindlessly going through news on social media is not good for you. And what I would say, and I say to all my clients, is do something different. Go out for a walk, take a deep breath and do some meditation, tidy the house up, message someone else, or even just make a cup of tea rather than sort of scroll endlessly. So that's what I would do. The next question is, are there different types of anxiety? And the answer to this is yes, there are. And so briefly, I'll just sort of give the outline of the different types. They're not in any particular order, these. So the first one is generalized anxiety, and this is like the feeling anxious or worried or fearful much of the time. So that's a really common form of anxiety. Social anxiety is the fear or embarrassment of judgment or humiliation in public. So that's sort of the main sort of uh, way this manifests itself, is people are worried or fearful of going out, or talking or being seen in public. Another form of anxiety is panic, and these can be panic attacks. So intense, like physical alarms and responses. Again, very common. Phobias are seen as a type of anxiety, and that's really a fear attached to like a specific object, or like a place or a situation. So it could be like spiders, public speaking, flying, open spaces. So again, that's like a common form of anxiety. There's also OCD, and people with OCD will have like intrusive thoughts and compulsive behaviors, and they're very much designed to try to reduce anxiety. Then you have like trauma-based anxieties like PTSD style responses, where the body and the mind reacts as though like a past event is happening again. So those are like the core 5 or 6 areas of anxiety. What they all pretty much have in common is they follow like a loop, and so you've got like a trigger, which leads to the thought leads to the feeling leads to the behavior, and then you have some sort of either a short-term relief or a stronger pattern emerging. So if we looked at that as an example of, say, someone with social anxiety, the trigger might be they receive an invitation to go to like a social event, and then that will lead to the thought, which could be, I'll embarrass myself, or I won't be able to cope. That thought will then lead to a feeling of, could be a tight chest or dread, or oh my God, this event is coming up. And the behavior might be to avoid the event completely. So I'm not going. I just wouldn't be able to handle it. The relief then is, oh, thank God I didn't go. So now I've sort of, in a way, I've dealt with it. But the learning, which is the issue, is the mind and the body has learned by avoiding going to that event, I've kept myself safe. And the result is the anxiety around social events gets stronger. So whatever the anxiety is, it's good to try to understand it in that loop. So you've got what triggers it, the thought itself, the anxious thought, the feeling it leads to, the behavior that comes from that feeling, the relief or the upside of that behavior, and then the learning. So what can you do? So the key thing is, and all this is on my website, is to first just go through each of those. So you could start by like spotting the trigger. You know, what does set my anxiety off? And that could be like a place, it could be a person, it could be a thought, it could be a message or a deadline or a sensation. There's lots of things involved there. So spot what the trigger is. So if you're aware of what causes it, you're starting to find the cure or find a way forward. And then look at what happens. What is the thought that comes out? What is the thought that I have once that trigger happens? So it could be, and it's normally a prediction, because we talked about before that anxiety is a fear of something that's not yet happened. So it could be, oh, I'll fail, or I'll panic, or they'll judge me, or something bad will happen. So you can see, you know, the action leads to the thought. And then what you can do is challenge what we talked about earlier on, which is the thinker-prover. Ask, what is my mind trying to prove here? And then ask, well, what else could be true? So that's really, really important, because you've got to challenge yourself of why you're having these thoughts in the first place. Another approach would be to say, to try to calm your body. So, you know, when you're putting yourself through that anxious response, start to breathe slowly, take some deep breaths, ground yourself, use some tapping movements, move around, go for a walk, do some mindfulness exercises. There's lots you can do. And then finally, you know, start building a new behavior, a new learning from that behavior, or the response that you've had to that anxious thought. Because the brain always wants to learn new things. And so if you're always trying to avoid something, then you'll just stay in the loop. But if you, rather than avoid it, do something differently, like go for a walk or do some exercise or whatever it is you decide to do, as opposed to avoid the event, avoid the anxiety, then you'll start to build up a new way of thinking about it. So the old loop might be get invitation to event, thought I'll embarrass myself, which leads to not wanting to go, and then the anxiety gets stronger. The new loop could be invite arrives, new thought, oh, this is anxiety predicting danger. I know that's my friend trying to help me, but I'm going to calm my body, and I'm going to send one message, or I'm going to go for 20 minutes to the event, and I'm going to survive it. And then your confidence will grow. So you've treated it in a different way. So remember, the way to deal with anxiety is to actually think of it as a loop, and then try to change every part, or one or two or three or four parts of that loop. So the next question is, why does anxiety feel so physical? And the simple answer to this is anxiety is not just in your head, it's a full body experience. So you have the thought, and that immediately leads to the release of chemicals. And the main ones, which I guess a lot of us have heard about, are like adrenaline, noradrenaline, and cortisol. So the brain says possible danger, and that's the thought. The body says, right, let's prepare and take some action. And so adrenaline speeds up the heart. It gets you ready for the fight or the flight or the freeze. The noradrenaline makes you move quick, or you're more alert. And the cortisol helps you mobilize energy around your body. So it tenses the muscles. It makes your breathing change. Your digestion can get disrupted. So this chemical is really good to get you alert and ready for a fight, for anxiety, but you don't want it hanging around. So if you don't resolve the anxiety, you can see how all these chemicals can just build up or be in your body all the time, and they're not really good for you. So what can you do? So the one of the best tools that I use with clients, and it's been proven over many years, and it's a hypnotherapy tool, is to get you to look at a part of your mind as having like a control room. And this is really important, that you actually start to believe that somewhere in the depths of your mind there is a room that says on the door to it, control room. And in that control room are the levers and the buttons and the switches for everything that there is in your body. Chemicals, reactions, fears, thoughts. You can change everything in this room. And the idea is that you go into that room and you have a look around of where the controls are for the thing that you're looking for. So it might be, let's go to an area of the control room which is about anxiety or panic or tension or overthinking. And then you imagine that all of those thoughts, anxiety, panic, tension, etc., have a dial linked to them. And that dial, for example, is set somewhere between 0 and 10. And so if it's set at 10, then that's the most anxious you could be. So let's say there's a button called the general anxiety level button. And I've gone inside my mind, I've closed my eyes, I've slowed myself down into like some form of slow meditation. I've slowed my brain down, and I've gone to the control room, and I've asked myself the question, if I was seriously looking at the control for my body and what level I've set anxiety at, or what exact level it's at now, what number is it? And let's say, for example, it might be at like 8. Then what you can do is you can put your hand on that dial and slowly turn it back. And you can turn it down to 7, to 6, to 5, to 4. You just make it smaller and smaller and smaller. And by doing that, you start to reduce the general level of anxiety that you and your body are experiencing. And you don't need to put it down at 0. You might want to set it at 1.5 or 2, or entirely up to you. And just remember, there are controls for everything. So there could be a control for a meeting that you've got coming up in a few weeks and your anxious feelings around that. That might be at 9 at the moment. Then let's turn that down to 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, down to a lower number. And it's really important that you can actually do this for any thought that you have in your life. So the tool really is to write down all the things that you think that are causing you anxiety at the moment. And they could be fears or thoughts, and then actually put a score next to each of them, and then put next to it a score where you'd like it to be, and then go to the control room of your mind and turn the dial down. And before you leave that control room, you'll notice a huge lever right near the door, and it's good just to pull that down and lock in all the changes that you've made. And what you can do is you could also lock the door to the control room so no one else can get in there, only you. And you have the key, and you can put that back inside you somewhere, that whenever you want to, you can go to it, get that key, open the door of the control room and go back in and play with the controls to your heart's content. So just remember, everything is in there. You can control everything. So the control room is a very good way of actually going in and changing what you want to change. The next question is, why do anxious thoughts feel so believable? So the way to look at this is to actually unpick the way a thought or a memory is saved in our brains or in our minds. And the way we describe this is through something called submodalities. So rather than get into sort of techie talk, the best way to explain this is to think of every thought that you have as being made up of ingredients. And a thought can only become a thought or a memory via one of your senses. So you'll only remember something because you've seen it, you've heard it, or you've felt it, or you might have smelt it or touched it as well. But the three main ones are sight, sound, and feeling. So whatever the thought, whether it's how you remember the color red, or how you remember what the fridge is like, or how you remember a fear, they're all made up of ingredients, and those ingredients are the senses. So whatever your thought is, just remember that. So let's take an example. If you wanted to make chocolate cake. So chocolate cake, you need ingredients like chocolate, flour, sugar, butter, and eggs. Now, if I take away the chocolate, I can only make cake. Now, I can't make chocolate cake. So that memory or thought has changed. If I take away the sugar and the butter, I can't even make cake anymore. So you see, by playing with some of the ingredients of the thought or the memory, you're able to change the memory. And so this is really important, because whatever your memory or whatever your thought, which is a fear is a memory or a thought, you can change it by playing with the ingredients. And the best way to do this, or a tool that you can use to do this, is think of the thought, think of the fear, and then close your eyes and think of what you're seeing. What is it? A picture? Is it a movie? Is it color? Is it black and white? Does it have a shape? Is it moving? Is it framed? Is it unframed? Just write down what that picture looks like to you, and then ask yourself the question, does it have any sound? And if it doesn't have any sound, does it have any internal sounds, or which might be voices that you hear when you think of that thought? So literally write down the audio as well around that thought. And then finally think of, does it have a feeling? Is there a feeling associated with it? Like, does it give me a hollow stomach, or does it give me a pain in my chest, or is it in my arm, or is it in my legs? You know, it might have some form of feeling associated with it as well. And what you then do is think of the picture that you've had and then slowly reduce it in size. So you can imagine it on a big screen. So a good way to do this is to say, right, I'm sitting in a theatre, I'm looking at this huge screen, and this is the thought of my fear of spiders, or my fear of the presentation that I've got coming up in a few weeks' time. So you literally watch the picture on the screen. So it might be a movie, it might be you standing there, it might be you nervous, or whatever it is, whatever the picture is, and then you slowly make it smaller and smaller and smaller, and you make it black and white, and you make it grainy, and you make it small and small and small, so it just becomes so reduced that it goes to the corner of the screen and it's gone. And then the next step to do is to bring the image back up and then listen to the sounds associated with it. And if there are any voices or there are any sounds, then turn them down. So you turn them down from 10 to 9 to 8 to 7 to 6 to 5 to 4 to 3 to 2 to 1. So all that sound is gone. And then you think of the feeling associated with it. And if that feeling's in your stomach and it's a hollow feeling, then start to spin it round and spin it so quickly that it starts to leave your body and comes out through your mouth and just flies away. So what you've done is you've played with all the actual ingredients in that thought, and you've changed them all. And then once you've got them all out, just squeeze your thumb and finger together and say, this is the new way that I'm going to think about this thought. And you anchor that by squeezing your thumb and finger. And what you've done there is you've actually changed the basic ingredients of the thought in your mind. And I can tell you that really, really works. If you do it over and over and over again, that thought will just change because you're playing with the ingredients, the basic parts of the thought. Next question is, where does imposter syndrome fit into anxiety? So I guess from an anxiety perspective, imposter syndrome is often really about ability. It is about like threat perception. So something happens like a meeting, a client session, a presentation, a compliment, a new opportunity, and the anxious mind just quickly adds a meaning to it. Like, I'm not ready, they'll judge me, I'm out of my depth, I'll be exposed. So yes, completely fits in with anxiety. And I read somewhere recently that there's been over a 500% increase in the search for imposter syndrome on Google since 2016. You know, and that's a really key fact to sort of look at, that people are out there searching for imposter syndrome because they're experiencing it. And so the key to it is to remember that yes, it is an anxious response, but there's ways of dealing with it. So a useful shift really is to stop treating it as like identity. So people often say, yeah, I've got imposter syndrome. But say something different. Say like, I'm having an imposter moment. So that's very different, because everyone can have an imposter moment. That doesn't mean that you are an imposter, or you have some form of syndrome, which, you know, just sounds bad. So have a repositioning of the whole thing. So you don't suffer from imposter syndrome, you have imposter moments sometimes. And this really does go back to what we were talking about earlier on the thinker prover part of the mind. So if you start thinking that you are not an imposter, then you will go to an area of the library which has all the books and all the reasons to show that you are not an imposter. If you believe you are an imposter, then you will go to that area of the library that tells you, yeah, I always make mistakes, you know, people criticize me, etc., etc. So those are the old files, you know, the awkward moments, the times that you felt out of place. So it's important to say, well, yeah, look, this is just an imposter moment. It was nothing. Actually, I've got this. I can handle this. I've done this stuff before. So that's the way to deal with the anxiety around imposter moments and not syndrome. So call it a moment and don't call it, and don't label yourself or give yourself an identity of an imposter, because that's just a limiting belief. The next question is, how can mindfulness or meditation help anxiety? And again, I think this is core and it's central to how you deal with anxiety in the long term. So it's it's part of the definition of anxiety that it's a fear of something that's not yet happened. So by making it a fear of something that's not now, something that's in the future, means that mindfulness is really important, because mindfulness allows you to practice being in the present moment. So it's almost like, and I understood this fully when I realized that the difference between your body and your mind. So if you think about being in the now, it's when your mind is in the now, because your body is always in the now. Your body cannot be in the past. Your body cannot be in the future. So when you have an anxious thought, it's your mind that has traveled to some point in the future, which is now worrying about something that's not yet happened. So your mind has like left your body. And again, when you think about the past, it's your mind that goes back to dwell over things that have already happened that you can do nothing about. So when you bring your mind back from the past or back from the future into your body now, that's when you are being present. And so the act of being mindful is to work on how you can bring your mind back to the now. And you know when your mind is in the now, it's when it's focusing on things that are happening now. And so the easiest way to do this is to almost have an anchor of something that happens now. And the most common one people use is their breath, because you are breathing now. That, you know, the breath, the in-breath that you take in is not in the future, it's not in the past, it's now. So if you focus on that in-breath and you close your eyes and you take several breaths and you just focus on the breathing in and out, you're being mindful and you're being present and you're meditating. So that is actually spending some time in the now. And the more time you can spend in the now, the more you train your mind to be more present. Think of it as like going to the gym for your mind. So you might go to, say, a physical gym and do weights for a day, and you'll walk out and you'll notice no difference whatsoever. But if you go there every day for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, after 3 months, you're going to notice a massive difference if you've been doing weight training every day for 3 months. And the same is true for mindfulness. If you're doing 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes of being in the now every day, and you do it every day, say for 90 days, then your brain will start to operate more in the now, and it will actually stop making reactional judgments or responses, and actually will start to actually make responses that are more thought through and are actually balanced. So mindfulness is really, really important for dealing with anxiety, because it allows you to actually have a much calmer outlook on life. And what I would say is there's many things you can do immediately. You don't have to sort of sit cross-legged and burn joysticks and things. You can just simply be mindful with daily activities. So like drinking a cup of tea, for example, is very much a mindful experience, because you are drinking the tea now, you're feeling the warmth of the cup now, you're feeling the drink go down your throat into your stomach now. So if you just think about the whole process of the smell of the tea, the feel of the tea, the taste of the tea, as it goes through your body, and take 10 minutes to have a cup of tea and just only think of that cup of tea. That's mindfulness in action. And this is a way of calming yourself and you'll see your anxiety and your anxious feelings actually drop the more mindful you become. Another way of doing this is to just spend some time in nature and just look up at the clouds for 5-10 minutes and just watch cloud formations. Again, you're actually focusing on something that's happening now, and you're bringing your brain or your thoughts back into your body, because when your brain and your thoughts are in your body and not somewhere else, that is when you are in the present moment. And the long and short of this is very simply, you can only do things in the now. You can't do anything in the past or the future when you're thinking about that other things. It's only in the now that things happen and they get done. So mindfulness, really, really important for anxiety. And the last question today is, what is one practical thing listeners can do right now to start taking back control? Now, thought about this for a while, and I think the best thing to do, which is a really great tool, is something called the challenge hierarchy. And by that, very simply, what you do is you write down the thing you're avoiding, and then you put on a list of, say, 8 things, the hardest version of that thing at the top. So it might be, for example, you're afraid of heights. So the top of the challenge would be maybe to climb a mountain or to climb a ladder. And the easiest thing to do might be just to watch a video of someone climbing a ladder. So the idea here is that anxiety we eat away at anxiety by actually doing things. So the actions don't have to be great to start off with or huge, but you start chipping away at it, the thing you're anxious about, by doing things that actually mean that you can actually get over this fear. So let's take some examples. So if you for example had, say, social anxiety. Now let's say you've got 8 things or 7 things to put on your challenge hierarchy. So the first one might be, I'm going to send a text to someone. So that's relatively easy to do. And in a way, you could like score these out of 10. So maybe that's like an easy thing that you think's like going to be 2 or 3 out of 10. If 10 is really hard and 1 is really easy. The next thing you might do is send a voice note, and then you might up it to have a 5-minute phone call with someone. Then the next step up the hierarchy, or the challenge hierarchy ladder, might be to meet a person for a coffee. So as you can see, you're actually going higher and higher up and doing the things that you originally had a fear of. The next thing up might be join a small group. The next one up might be speak once at a meeting, just stand up and say something. And the final one might be go and attend a big event with a few friends. So you work yourself towards the thing that you had the fear about. So the challenge hierarchy is a really great tool to overcoming fears and anxiety. Let's take another one. So it might be, say, AI and job anxiety. So the hierarchy could be, the first rung on the ladder could be learn one AI tool today. The next one up might be the next day, use that AI tool for a simple task. So now you've learned it and now put it into practice. The next step up could be what skills are becoming more valuable out there in the marketplace, and start doing some research of what AI skills that you might need. And then the next rung up would be start having a conversation once or twice a week with other people who are also interested in AI. And another step up could be start building your own plan about how you're going to build AI into your life. So you see, you create these hierarchical ladders which you start to climb, and by climbing them you start to prove yourself that you can actually do these things. So that's a great way of starting to overcome anxiety through action. I've run out of questions, and that was the Feel Good Hour on anxiety. We covered what it is, why it happens, and how we can start calming the mind and taking back control. So if one thing landed today, don't try to do everything at once. Just pick one tool. Try the control room, build a small challenge hierarchy, or just practice coming back to the now. It's just all about one small action. That's where it starts. So anxiety grows when we avoid, overthink, and rehearse fear. It starts to change when we pause, we interrupt the pattern, and we calm the body, and we take one manageable step forward. You don't have to beat anxiety in one heroic leap. Build a ladder, then climb one rung. If you've enjoyed the episode, please subscribe to the channel, follow the podcast, and share it with someone who might find it useful. And you can find out more about my work at 9kmby9am.com, and you can listen to the Feel Good Hour at thefeelgoodhour.com on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. We'll see you next time on the Feel Good Hour. And remember, real life problems, straight answers, and tools that work.
Good Hour podcast
with Sam Griffin.
and Nigel Jones.
Real life problems, straight answers, tools that work.
We don't just talk about it.
We help you change it.
The Feel Good Hour.
Listen now on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube.
It's like a coaching session.
You can listen in on
Visit
feelgoodhour.com.
The Feel Good Hour.
Think better.
Feel better.